Hi, I'm Liz Larson with Transform One Idea, and I'm here today with Marina Raye of Wellbeing Strategies. And Marina is a integrative therapist. I always have a hard time with that one, Marina, getting it out because I want to say transformational therapist, which is also true about you.
Mm-hmm.
What fascinates me about you is that you incorporate so many things under the umbrella of therapy, coaching, which are Huna, yoga, breathwork. Would you explain to us just a little bit of what that's about? What is integrative therapy, and what are some of the other things that you actually do in your practice?
Well, I find that just talk therapy can only take you so far. A lot of people who come to me that say they've been in therapy for a long time and now they really understand what the problem is, but they still have the problem. So what I like to do is help people move from that stuck position, and understanding what's quote unquote wrong with you is not the solution. So what do we do? How do we get better? And that's why I incorporate all these different philosophies, techniques to help people actually move and start feeling better.
So in your practice, would it be right to say that you actually prepare a strategy for the person using the techniques that you have?
Yes, and of course it's very individual because each person has different experiences, different issues, and so that's another reason I like to use so many different techniques and different approaches, because not everything works for everybody. So it's just kind of targeting specific issues for that particular person using those various approaches.
I really like that, and I love the idea because there's no cookie cutter approach with you. A lot of practitioners of every kind of modality kind of can get stuck in that modality, and it's the only way. And I really admire so much that about you, that you're not stuck on one thing. You have so many pieces that you can add to a real strategy that will help someone change the thing in their life that they want to change, which is why people come to a therapist in the first place. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to talk about today, which is a real passion of mine and something I use for my own health and has been essential for me, is breath work. And I know you use that in therapeutic practice, and I am so fascinated about how. So would you share with us a little bit about that?
Yes, I think the reason I like working with breath, because to me is once you can figure out how to work with breath, you really don't need anything else. And I love using other techniques because they're fun. And again, sometimes something works better than something else. But really just working with the breath, being aware of the breath, is the solution for a lot of things.
Well, you said something to me that really perked my attention. You were talking about off camera before we came on about the natural breath. And I think though it seems like the most natural thing that we do is breathing, we don't all have good natural breathing. Would you share with us a little bit about that?
What's really interesting, if you watch babies breathing,
Yeah.
you could see how the entire body from neck to the legs almost is moving with the breath. And that's a natural breathing. It's deep, it's in the belly. But as we experience life and get stressed out, the breath gets shorter and shorter, and we learn how to hold the breath. And it's one of the things that a lot of my clients tell me is that the first thing when they start working with the breath, the first thing they realize that they don't breathe. I
Yeah.
catch myself a lot of times not breathing. So we just learn how to hold the breath, how to restrict it, and the tremendous amount of physical tension that we carry in the muscles basically prevents us from taking a deep breath. The tiny little muscles around the rib cage, I'm not talking about the major muscles, but the rib cage is surrounded by the muscles, and when they're tight, it can't move. When the belly is tight, the diaphragm can't move down, and therefore we can't take a breath deep into the low portions of the lungs. And a lot of things happen there. For instance, 70% of blood oxygenation It's happening in the lower portion of the lungs. So if we just breathe in here, which most people do, you can breathe all you want, but you're still not getting a lot of oxygen into the blood flow, therefore not enough oxygen in the brain and so on.
Wow. I mean, that's something I really didn't know. In all my years of breath work, I didn't know that most of the oxygenation happens in the lower portion of the lung. So does that mean when we get anxious sometimes, or nervous or angry even, and we're, breathing like in the upper portion, that we really are starving not only the brain, but the rest of the body of oxygen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing that happens with anxiety or anger, that people feel like they can't catch the breath, and it's because they're not exhaling. So you're trying to get it and you're not exhaling, so you can't get anything else, any breath in, and whatever you do get is all up here, which stimulates sympathetic nervous system, which has to do with fight or flight, so you get even more anxious. So really one could breathe like this and make themselves panicky by just breathing here.
That's really, really interesting. So it's a vicious cycle, is what you're saying. The lack of breath, the lack of oxygen, the lack of slow, deep breathing actually stimulates what's the adrenal glands to create the fight or flight, which makes it more. That's really interesting. So the other thing I am curious about then is, if they're not breathing out fully, wouldn't you be loading with carbon dioxide as well?
I would think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that brings me to really my first question. So a big part, is it true that a big part of what you do is deal with the emotions and the breath?
Yes, thinking, feeling, breathing, which all come together. It's hard to separate them, because as you think, you feel the thought, the electrical impulse, which the thought is, stimulates hormonal response, and that's the emotion, the feeling that we have in the body, and the breath corresponds to whatever emotion that we're feeling. I don't know what's first, the breath or the emotion, but they come together.
It's the
So
chicken and the egg
yes, yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
regulating, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to say, the regulating the breath, you regulate the emotion, you slow down the mind.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. Um, which emotions can be affected by breath? And in a therapeutic setting, we're talking about emotions that become a problem. Would that be correct?
Yep.
So which ones can actually be helped by breath work?
Mm-hmm. Well, all emotions are, the breath and emotion go together. So when we're happy, we have a certain way of breathing. But the problem comes with, most people are concerned with anxiety or depression. So, and that also comes with this constant thinking, the running of the mind. So the anxious breath is usually very short, very fast, and in the low portion of the lungs, the higher portion of the lungs. Also, people with anxiety breathe through the mouth, which stimulates the fight or flight response. So taking a breath like that, and a lot of times with anxiety or panic attack, the person would try to take a breath, and they would do it right up here, which would actually stimulate the fight or flight again. So it's learning how to breathe through the nose, which would automatically stimulate a deeper breathing, learning how to relax the belly. That's the whole process of coming back to natural breathing will help relax the person. So for anxiety, that's what you would work on. With depression, the breath is usually very, very shallow. So there's not enough oxygen, obviously not enough energy. So there's a different kind of breathing, which actually inhaling longer than exhaling can bring more energy. But even with depression, the relaxation, there's also a lot of tension in the body. And relaxing the breath will help relax the muscles, therefore creating more energy.
That's really interesting. I think about depression. you don't think really about tension in depression, but now that you say it, it's true. And so I find it so interesting that you're talking about, you're a therapist, so we're talking about issues of the mind, but you're really including the body and what happens in the body. So it's off topic just the tiniest bit, but would you expand on that a little bit about how it is that you incorporate the body in things that are mostly considered issues of the mind?
Well, that's probably is my my passion. Is you can't work with the mind without including the body, and I think that is where we get into trouble. You try to do it all up here without including the body, and it can't work because the body is what experiences emotions. And so a lot of times I'll ask the person, well, where do you feel anger? I'll say, what's in my head? Well, the thinking is in the head, but it's the body that's getting all tense and the breath is being held. So by changing the body and how we use the body, how we use the breath, we can help changing the thinking, because of course thinking is primary, but it's very difficult to just shut the mind. I mean, if one could do it, that'd be great. And yeah, change can happen instantly by just totally shifting the thinking. But for majority of us, we need to address the body.
I mean, that is really an amazing perspective that you have, and that clients who come to see you have the benefit of that, of just the knowledge that it is not only a thought issue, that it's the body, that your breathing might even be making it worse, that tension in the body can create this problem. So it sounds to me like a person might very quickly be able to shift the issue they're having by learning one of these processes.
Absolutely. Yeah, breathing creates an instant change. One of the things I find kind of funny when people complain about sleep, I was just talking to a young boy who can't sleep, maybe sleeps 2-3 hours a night. And I told him with slow, deep breathing, and there he goes yawning. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm yawning. It's like, do you think you could fall asleep right now? Yeah, I think I could. But not even putting two and two together, just by literally 3 minutes, I think we did 3 minutes of slow breathing, which activated parasympathetic nervous system, which yawning is an indication of. And there you go, you could fall asleep.
You know, that's interesting. When you work with a client, do you actually explain all these things about the body, the parasympathetic nervous system, the oxygen in the lungs, the relationship with the muscles? Do you actually talk to them about that?
And that depends. If the person is open and interested and curious, some people would come and say, well, I don't believe in techniques.
Yeah.
Okay, so first we'll try and see if you feel anything, and then I can explain to you why that works. It's simple physiology, maybe not so simple, but physiology. That's how it works. It really depends. Some people are interested in knowing why. Some people just want to feel better. Yeah.
That's interesting about people. I tend to be one of those that make a practitioner crazy with my questions. I have a curious mind. I need to know. So I'm fascinated by this, and I think it's amazing and so interesting that you know it, and that you don't have to teach that piece of it for a person to still get change. They can just have the experience, and the experience of change, in my experience, is what sells us on anything, that we have the experience of a change. So emotional breathing for anxiety and depression. Are there other things? Can a person with, let's say, PTSD use breath work and get some benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. The person with PTSD usually experience the anxiety and depression, and they're very often on edge. They in this hold position. The body is always in alert. It's always expecting something, bracing for something, and so there's tremendous amount of tension. So breath cannot flow when there is so much tension. So yeah, absolutely, changing the breath can help with a lot of those issues.
Do you find that a person who adopts a breath work practice, so meaning, they take on some of this and do it daily, is their general overall health improved?
Yeah, and I'll just say that Dr. Brown and Dr. Gerhardt teach coherent breathing, which is what I teach my clients as well. And they've done many, many studies, and they notice that 20 minutes twice a day for 3 months will reduce 70% of depression, anxiety, PTSD symptoms, and improve overall health. Because everything works better when there's less tension. And when the breath is not flowing, there's tension in the body. So that's stress, that's physical stress, and the body has to cope with it. So all the elements of the body, all the glands, everything, the immune system is coping with that stress on top of whatever else is going on. So yeah.
So I've heard that especially anxiety, stress can shrink the brain, actually, probably from lack of oxygen, and especially impact the frontal lobe. And I read an article once that said that if you practice deep breathing for 20 minutes a day, that you could actually expand or increase your frontal lobe. I can't remember exactly, but something like 20% over a 6-week period. It was a huge number. Have you ever heard anything about that, about expanding the actual physical brain with breath?
I never heard about it, but that's good to know. I'm going to breathe more myself.
Yeah, it was an article about cognition and how the breath work actually can expand the frontal lobe, and for elderly people. So breath work is one of my passions too. So I read as much as I can when I can find it, but it is a little obscure. It's not very mainstream ideas of breath work and healing. So, the more that people like you can get it out there to the public, the more people can be served and helped by it. Not just people, sitting in your office. I want to ask now about, you mentioned mind chatter when we were talking before, that there's a way to quell mind chatter. And some of us, I'm not saying me, but some of us tend to have some mind chatter. What do we do about that?
Well, focusing on the breath. So when you do, let's say, coherent breathing, which is about 4 to 6 breaths a minute, it takes concentration, which leads to meditation, but it's concentration. And the mind can't really multitask. It's not the reality. We can go maybe from here to there very, very, very quickly. So it feels like we're doing many things at the same time, but not really. So if the mind is focused on the breath, then it's quiet because it's focused. It's giving the breath something to focus on. And I always do this with clients when they ask them to breathe for just a minute or two, and then ask them, what were you thinking about? Well, I was thinking about the breath. Well, yeah, so you focused. So quieting the mind is giving it something to focus on. And of course, there are all kinds of meditation techniques for that. I just think breath is easier because breath is with us all the time. So just focusing and counting the breath, or just being aware of the breath, will slow down the mind.
So, that makes perfect sense. We're focused on something else, so we can't be focused on the mind chatter. And we're doing the body a great service, and the mind and the brain, expanding and bringing more oxygen, plus bringing more energy in. Now, Marina, are you trying to sneak meditation on us? Is this an introduction to meditation?
It can be. The first in yoga, now I want to make sure that I'm not lying here, but the first part of meditation is concentration. It's learning to concentrate. So there are many, they would tell you to focus on the candle, for instance, which is a great form of concentration, but breathing, again, is easier because it's with us. And so many people tell me, I try to meditate and I can't. There's no such thing that you can't. I think the problem that people get into is that they try to focus and then the mind runs away. So the whole point of practice, the practice is that we do it all the time, is that you just come back to it. So as an example, I tell people, when I started meditating, I was doing a Zen style meditation, and we were instructed to count every breath, every exhalation till 10. But the moment you start thinking, you go back to 1. So for months, I was on 1, 1, 1, because, the mind would it literally took me months to get to too. So it's just coming back to it. So people get frustrated very easily. So, well, I can't do it. But it's just deciding that I'm going to practice.
Do you think there is an aspect with breath work versus maybe transcendental or traditional meditation that is not including breath work, that a breath work meditation really is easier because you're doing something rather than just sitting and doing nothing? Do you think that that's a piece of it? I mean, like you said, the focus.
I think that's a piece of it, but I also think that when you stop breathing properly, everything works better in the body. And as it's working better in the body, it's you see the effects faster. So
Yeah.
I think had I started with breathing, maybe it would not have taken me as long as it did with other forms of meditation. And I love any meditation that I tried. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think breath is just a little bit easier because it's always with us. And as you mentioned before, you could be, once you learn how to do it, you could be standing in line and breathing. I do a lot when I'm driving just because what else am I going to do? So you can do it anyway. Nobody knows what you're doing.
That's hilarious. I do that too. I practice my breath work in the car. And what's amazing is we are in the car more than we imagine. Sometimes I've counted I'm in the car 45 minutes a day. And because it's my practice, if I'm alone in the car to practice my breath work, sometimes I get 45 minutes in.
Exactly.
Sometimes it might be 5. But that is true. We were talking about that if you're anxious and in line at a grocery store, you can practice deep breathing. If you're, on the verge of road rage, you can change and practice deep breathing. And I think really just the focus, like you said before, of switching. There's an inward focus as well. And then you sort of slow down and practice your breathing. It takes your mind off of whatever you were anxious about or irritated about in the first place. So even just that function. The other thing is you feel great when you practice breath work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why not? You're getting oxygen, you're getting, expanded lungs, and you're getting energy. So you feel amazing. Yep. So that's all well and good. But I have to ask you, is there anything that people need to be aware about? Not really concerned, but aware about. Is there anyone who shouldn't practice breath work?
Mm-hmm. I think anybody can practice simple, deep breathing. I wouldn't recommend advanced practices because you really have to know how to use your lungs. You have to have somebody teaching you, guiding you. And I think for most of us, it's not even necessary. It's great if that's what you want to focus on and then work with somebody, maybe a yoga teacher or somebody who is familiar with breathing techniques. But other than that, I've experienced let's call it a fire breath that is taught in a lot of yoga classes with a master when my body was actually doing it without my participation. I wasn't doing it. And the experience was so different from me trying to do it that I never actually do this anymore because I find that it's not even good for my body to do because it's a very, very different experience. So, like I said, I think for most people, it's not necessary. Just learning how to breathe in the belly deeper and slower, anybody can do and anybody can benefit from that.
So I think that's really interesting and great because, if we don't have to get all fancy with it and it's something that we have available, we're more likely to use it. I've practiced breath work for the better part of 15 years. And there are some advanced breaths that I really like, but I have found that there are times when I can't do them, when my body just will not allow it. But what it always allows is slow, deep belly breathing. So would you talk to us about that a little bit? How is it that we're breathing wrong most of the time?
I think the first thing to notice is when do we hold the breath? Just starting to pay attention to breathing on a regular basis, just taking 5 minutes a day and try to slow it down a little bit. Then noticing where we hold it. I noticed, for instance, years ago, um, I wasn't breathing when I was eating. I was like, well, that's
Oh,
interesting. I really need oxygen to digest the food, but that was one of the stressful things for me. And just noticing when we hold the breath is already helpful, because then you will take a deeper breath.
okay. So what's a belly breath? What does that mean exactly?
Well, the belly breath is basically when the belly is relaxed and the diaphragm is able to relax the way it's supposed to. When we inhale, then the air actually goes, the breath goes into the lower portions of the lungs. And the easiest way to practice is to laying down without anything restricting the belly, and just placing the hands gently on the stomach area and feeling the hands move, not being pushed with the muscles, but actually move with breath. So that's how I started practicing. Some people tell me that they were told to put a book on the belly. That's fine. Anything to just feel that it's moving. And the laying down, I think, is just a lot easier. The back is straight, so the lungs can be open, and it's easier to notice whether the belly is moving or not.
So most of the time you see a person when they say take a deep breath and their shoulders move up like this,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yes.
does that mean that most of the time people are taking a deep breath and trying to fill their upper chest?
Yeah. Usually, when people try to take a deep breath, a lot of times people breathe through the mouth, and they feel like they have to take a lot of air right away. So it's this kind of thing, which would definitely activate sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, and not going to get us any oxygen. So the idea is to breathe through the nose and
Okay.
just extend the breath. So it's pulling it in rather than guzzling it all up all at once. So by just slowing it down and breathing through the nose, it will physiologically, it will be going to the belly unless there's a lot of tension there.
So is it true also that breathing through the nose also has some benefits? It warms the breath for us, kind of preparing it for the lungs. Is that a piece of it?
I heard about it. I haven't focused on that aspect of it, but yeah. But the mouth breath is important too. When there is such thing as emergency situation where we need to activate our extremities and run or fight or whatever. So that's what it is. It's important. It's needed. So it's not that we should never take a mouth breath, but on a regular basis, just to be relaxed. Yeah, it's the way it's designed physiologically is that the mouth breath will go to the upper portion of the lungs, and the nose breathing will go lower.
That's really, really interesting. And it does tend to be that way when we want to relax. Usually we do that. We take a big deep breath in through the nose, that's what we do. So our bodies know that already, that's something. So for a belly breath to practice, we want to breathe in through the nose and fill the belly, expanding the lower sections. That's our goal, right?
Initially, yes. So the complete yogic breath is belly first, ribs next, then the chest. So it's good to eventually become aware that there's a difference at just the belly. We can breathe just in the belly. It's not going to be very deep, but it's good to just get that feeling, and then maybe placing the hands on the ribs and feeling the ribs expanding, and then the chest rising. And in yoga, actually, we lift in the arms to open that part of the lungs. So that would be, most people don't walk around breathing, taking the full breath, but it's really important to get it down.
Yeah, and I think also because we have forgotten that. We've forgotten how powerful our breath is. Maybe our ancestors knew it, but we've forgotten. So it is important to maybe relearn how to get that full, deep breath in. So you were talking about sleep a little bit ago. Would you share with everyone a little bit more about that, about how you can use breath for sleep?
Mhm. But that's as I said before, we can't sleep if we're in fight or flight mode. The body just can't get there because it's so stressed and so tight. Um, so it's very important to get the parasympathetic nervous system activated for the body to relax and get an idea, okay, now it's time to sleep. So a lot of times, some people who can't sleep and sometimes just don't sleep for nights, and then eventually they're just sort of knocked out, but it's not a relaxed kind of sleep. So in order to prepare the body for sleep is very important to slow the breath down, and there are techniques that could help with that, so that when the exhalation is a little bit slower than the inhalation, that stimulates the sleep as well. So if somebody were to inhale for, let's say, 1, 2, 3, and exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would help with relaxing the body and preparing it for sleep.
Okay, so it's a slowing of the breath, and I don't think most people think about that, how long they inhale versus how long they exhale. Would you be able to show us that?
Okay. I don't know if that would be visible, but I'm going to visibly exhale. So it's interesting that when the breath is soft and relaxed, you don't even see the body moving so much. And when the body is very relaxed, it doesn't even have to be very deep and very slow. It's just very soft and very relaxed, but it's going in the right place. So doing this kind of thing is not a relaxed breath. So when it's very visible, it's probably not relaxed.
Well, that's interesting because I can definitely see it, and I know our audience could see how soft that breath was, and how your facial muscles relaxed, and even your shoulders, just with that one breath. You appear very relaxed already, and then it was visible how that calmed you. So really all you were doing is breathing in softly to a count of 4, and then out through the mouth to a longer count of 6. And so,
That's for the sleep, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so how long might a person practice that to get the effect of relaxation, and where it will help them sleep?
Well, this is what happens with the breath. As you just said, I could take one breath and I will be more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
So the effects are immediate. The question is it a band-aid effect, or do we actually do healing? So we can breathe for a minute or two and relax in the moment, but then we're going to get anxious or depressed or whatever it is 5 minutes later. So practicing on a daily basis is when you're going to start actually affecting a real change. Ideally 20 minutes twice a day, the coherent breathing, which is about 4 to 6 breaths a minute, equal inhalation and exhalation. That's ideal. Most people probably won't do 20 minutes twice a day, but even just breaking it up, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, whenever you can take a deep breath is good. But regular practice always better.
So like we said before, though, a person could do it in the car. If you work at your desk, you could practice deep breathing while you work, correct?
Yes. However, you first need to learn how to do it.
Yeah,
So, and
right.
again, so practice, I don't want to discourage people from breathing because, breathe anytime, take a deep breath anytime. But it's the regular practice, which is what happens when we practice on a regular basis, the body remembers. The body is amazing. It remembers everything, doesn't forget anything from ever. And so it begins to remember what it's like to be relaxed. And so after a certain amount of practice, it's will automatically say, wait a minute, I don't need to feel this, so I want to relax. I'll take a deeper breath. So the body itself is going to start reminding the mind, say, hey, you're stressing me here. Let's relax.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And this will broadcast out to a lot of people who actually work in the healing field, who are practitioners already themselves and who help with other people. So I think that little word that you said, healing, is going to perk up the ears of a lot of people. So breath work really becomes a practice. And eventually, I mean, at least for me, a lifestyle. I have to do it for a particular health problem I have, and it changes everything when I practice my breath with focus and with intention. But I don't always have to do that. I just have to know my deep breathing to know how to change my physiology enough to affect a better overall feeling for myself, to shift a little bit. So I like that you said that a person really does need to learn. Would you say maybe a foundational breath or a group of breaths? What would a person need to do to start?
I would suggest just the coherent breathing, which is, as I said, 4 to 6 breaths a minute, 5 breaths a minute. And it's basically an account of 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4. So that's the rhythm. And just staying with that rhythm. And obviously, if you do it for 20 minutes, you're going to get out of that rhythm, which is not a problem. Just going back to it. That I think this is amazing. Again, Dr. Brown and Dr. Gerhardt teach this breathing, and they travel all over the world. They work with rape victims, the natural disasters victims, slaves in Africa. I mean, they do it all, and the results are amazing. The PTSD, they're both psychiatrists, and they primarily teach people or heal people, help people heal through breath and movement. With very, very little medication.
So this is really very incredible, I think. We're talking about psychology, which is what you are. You're a psychologist, correct? Is that right? Social worker. Very good. And you're talking about healing psychological issue and the body at the same time, which is really the meaning of holistic. It treats the person as a whole. So when they're working with you, not only are they going to ease the emotional or psychological problem that they've been having, but also come away with what sounds like a healthier body in general.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
So there's one more piece that you actually do have, and we'll go into it next time, but you actually do discuss with people one more level, which is nutrition as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a piece of what you do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a very important piece, I don't follow it myself 100%, but the issues like anxiety, for instance, it's or sleep. When people talk to me about being anxious and then they tell me that they drink, 5 bottles, big things of Coke and, coffee with 5 sugars in it. You can't not be anxious. I mean, if I'm to do this, my goodness, I'd probably pass out. So it's the nutrition is very important. Most people don't drink enough water. A lot of people tell me, "Well, I hate the taste of water," of course, because your taste buds are so overstimulated with tremendous amount of sugar and artificial stuff that is in Coke or whatever it is that people drink, or sports drinks, or flavored water. They think they're doing something good to themselves because they're drinking flavored water. And if you read the ingredients, I mean, there's nothing but chemicals in there. So that's also very important. So taking care of the body from all aspects, breathing, moving, eating, drinking well, all of it is very important.
Well,
Well,
I mean, I think this is so important in general, this conversation that we're having, because I think the statistic is something like 1 in every 2 people. So 50% of people are on some form of mind-altering drugs, antidepressant medicine, or something like it, which is a huge number. And I don't know if it's accurate. But we're talking about all these people who are having emotional and physical problem. And if I'm hearing you correctly, a person with, let's say, anxiety, if they learn a breath work and are mindful of that there aren't things that are causing anxiety in their diet, by some degree, they could minimize that anxiety. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely, no question. Yep.
even just with the assistance of someone like you who knows those two small things, and I know your practice is much, much deeper, they can make a change in their own body, in their own life, without the assistance necessarily of a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a hugely important conversation, and I'm so appreciative of you having it with us today, because I think it can help a lot of people. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about breath work for the mind and the body?
Well, I just say give it a try. Give it a try and notice the changes.
I think that's a great idea. So if someone wanted to learn how to do this and work with you, how do we contact you?
Well, I'm currently working in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts, Mattapoisett Wellness Center. So yeah, you can go on my webpage, wellbeingstrategies.org, and the information is there.
Okay. And if somebody is out of the area and wanted to have a conversation with you, can they reach out to you through email as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Email, phone, Skype.
Wonderful. I really encourage anybody who is considering making a change in their health and well-being through breath work to reach out and just have a conversation with Marina. I know for myself, breath work has made a huge difference in my life. Some of you know and some of you don't, but I've had a lung disease for the better part of 15 years. That's progressive. And I should be in a different state than I'm in now, but I am quite well because I use breath work. And when we get offline, I guarantee you I'm going to be picking Marina's brain a little more as well. So reach out to Marina at wellbeingstrategies.com. Thank you so much again. .org. Wellbeingstrategies.org. You'd think I'd know that. And Marina Raye, Raye. And of course, you'll be able to see her lovely name and contact information at the end of this video. So please hang around to see that. Again, I'm Liz Larson with Transform One Idea, where we're exploring the idea that the smallest shifts can create the biggest change. And we've learned today that even a small shift in the way that we breathe can make a huge change in our well-being psychologically and physically. And we may even be able to learn how to meditate with it. So thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you all again really soon. Ciao, Marina. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.